Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. Raise your hands high and proud if you watched the game last Sunday. 4 of you. 4 of you in this room watched the game. That defies every statistic that I've read. Let's try it one more time. Raise your hands high and proud if you watched the game last Sunday. Well, that's a different result. There we go. Almost all of you watched the Super Bowl. What'd you think? It was a boring game. I didn't have any dog in this fight, so I wasn't super connected to it. And I'll be honest with you, the commercials didn't do much for me this year either. Normally the commercials really move me. This year they didn't so much. One of the reasons why the game was somewhat besides being low scoring until the fourth quarter, is because in the history of the Super Bowl, it was one of the games with the lowest amount of penalties ever called. I don't know if you knew that. It wasn't but it was one of, with the lowest amount of penalties ever called. So the Seahawks had 4 penalties for a total of 25 yards. Patriots had 3 penalties for a total of 25 yards. That's not a whole lot. And no penalties were called until the end of the second quarter, which is also pretty remarkable. Now, unlike most people, I take a lot of interest in the referees of the game. Who are they? What earned them the right to referee the game? And how are they going to call this game? Because ultimately, so much of who makes it to that game and how that game is played could come down to one simple call and how honest they will be. And you know, it's no coincidence that these referees always wear black and white. Because the inference from that is not to differentiate them from the players on the field. Of course, you could do that, but you could put them in neon green and it might do the same thing, or a bright orange. But they wear black and white to be an emblem. And the emblem is that they're going to call things in a black and white way. If they see a penalty, they're going to call it. And if they don't see a penalty, they won't. And it will be regardless of their allegiance, or where a referee might be from, or where the crowd might be yelling more from, or what people will think. They're just going to call the balls and strikes as they see it. I like that. I wish I could be a referee more, because we all crave that. Sometimes I watch the game, whether it's the Super Bowl or whether it's the NBA Finals or even just a regular ball game, and you see a play that you know was called wrong. It was a catch, but they called it incomplete. It was a 3-pointer, but his foot was on the line. And you know it even from review, and I remember it even from a time before review. And even though it might affect my team and the outcome of the game, I still crave the legitimate call. So if my team has their foot on the line but it counts for 3, I feel this tension. And the tension is that the call has to be made that the 3-pointer doesn't count because his foot was on the line, even though it means my team will get 2 instead of 3 points, and even though it means we could lose the game. I crave those moments, and I crave being around people who can feel the same way, even if their team is in some level of harm through that process. So why are we craving that when it comes to a ball game? Why do we respect it when the coaches encourage the refs to call it as they see it and they do a fair job? But we do such a terrible job of that when it comes to our own beliefs, or even when it comes to our own politics. When it comes to our own politics, what we have been doing lately, and by lately I don't only mean in the last 6 months, I also mean the last 6 years, and perhaps even in the last 16 years, is we have begun to erode the moral fabric that allows us to call balls and strikes and see right versus wrong at the same time. We have this bias towards our allegiance, our side, our team, and we think That when someone on our team does something that is wrong or immoral or something that shouldn't happen, that we can excuse it, explain it away, say it's a nothing. And when they do something right, we chant it loudly for everyone to hear. Why can't we act the same way that we do on the field? This might be hard for some of you to imagine, but when I was a young man in high school, I started for my high school basketball team. I was a decent player. I was a power forward, and I scored a lot. I went to a Jewish day school. We played a lot of private Christian schools. Now, one of two things happened. We lost just about every single game, without question. But we either got blown out by like 55 points, or we lost by 3 or 4 points. But one way or another, we lost every game. There was one particular game we were playing against a Christian school in Michigan, and it was close. It was the fourth quarter, and it was close. Both me and one of the other players on the team had 4 fouls, so one more and we're out of the game. We had plenty of points, and it was intense. And I had taken a shot. It went in the basket, counted for 2, and I was fouled, which meant it could be a 3-point play. But for some reason or another, the referee said, shooter is shooting 2, which meant he did not count the basket as going in. And when it went in, I said to him, I shot it and it went in. He goes, no, it didn't go in. It hit the rim and came out. Now, all of my team saw it go in. All of the opposing team saw it go in, and we were playing on the opposing team's court. And I honestly believe that the referee just didn't see it. I don't think he was being anti-Semitic. I don't think he was being a Jew hater. I think he just didn't see it. So he claimed that it didn't go in. So the team that we were playing, the Christian team, was fine with it. And one man in the pews, the bleachers, he gets up, part of this community, and he says loudly, "Ref, the shot went in. It counts for 2." I remember that moment from high school vividly. I was a senior, and I just kind of like was dumbfounded. I still think about it all these years later. The ref didn't change the call, but I was compelled by this good Christian who clearly was rooting for his home team, who probably had a kid in the game. But what he did is he wanted to say right is right. And if the ball went in, and it's going to even change the outcome of the game because it was close, you got to say it. He was really modeling for his kid what a good parent should do and what a good Christian should do, what a good religious person should do. That moment was never lost on me. And I have craved to have that moment in all of my life and to incorporate it into everything that I do. And I think we have a responsibility, where and when we can, to throw the yellow flag and to say foul, regardless if it's against our team or not. That means when the Israeli government might do something that I find is wrong or immoral or something that brings a blight to the Jewish people, I'll throw the yellow flag and I'll call it wrong. Those of you who know me, and you know me well, knows that it would never cause my Zionism to shake. But I would still say that something is wrong when it's wrong. And if my particular candidate, who were either running for office or in office, did something that I thought was abhorrent or morally repugnant, I would throw the yellow flag and I would say, this is wrong. Because what I think we should aspire to be is a nation that are all umpires, that can call balls and strikes as we see them, and not just with an allegiance for where we want the team to win. I bring all of this up this week for two reasons that intersect beautifully. The first is we're reading the moral and religious code that is given to the Jewish people on the heels of receiving the Ten Commandments, which was last week in Parshat Mishpatim. And that moral and Jewish code gives us all types of laws that we should follow. About someone who is an indentured servant but doesn't want to leave their servitude, would rather stay with their owner. It gives us laws about not putting stumbling blocks in front of the blind. It gives us laws about ox that gore someone else's ox and how we deal with those situations. But what's amazing from the text is it tells us that our responsibility to do the right thing in building this moral code is devoid of our allegiance to the person who has the responsibility. The text even goes so far to tell us very clearly that if we find the ox of our enemy wandering, meaning our enemy's ox could be lost and the person could incur some major loss from this wandering ox, we have a responsibility to return it, even though it's from our enemy. We can't show that we follow laws only for people we want. I think that was the moral code that caused Israel to stand on the Syrian border for years while a civil war was happening and to say, I want to treat your ill and your sick who can't be treated in your own country. And they did. Thousands upon thousands of people who were severely wounded in the Syrian civil war came to Israel and were healed. They were given the medical attention because Israel said, you might be our enemy when it comes to war, but our responsibility to care for you is the same. And I don't think it's much different, especially in the history of warfare, where no war has ever had one group or one country against another who then found it incumbent upon themselves, as they were trying to eradicate their enemy that was sworn to their destruction, to feed them and nourish them at the same time. But Israel did. And I think that's because we are a country that is built on this very same code. And even in the special parsha that we read today, of Parshat Shkalim, we are told that everyone gives machatzit shekel. The rich don't give more and the poor don't give less because the Torah and our teachings embrace the notion of full equality. Just because Seattle might have had more people in the stands at the Super Bowl does not mean that they should get better calls. It doesn't mean if one of their players was nicer to the referee that they shouldn't be blind to the incidents that happen on the field. It's a reminder for all of us that we need to be umpires, and it shouldn't affect who or how we are. It should make all of our stock rise. The second reason I bring this up this Shabbat is not only because of the intersection of Mishpatim, but it's because of the deep disgust and upset that I felt in seeing a video meme circulated by the President of the United States that depicted a former President of the United States and his wife in the most racist trope that history has known. I found it repugnant. I found it atrocious. I found it wrong. I found it morally smelly. And what made it all the worse is that the President of the United States took no responsibility for it and refused to apologize for it. Now, there's probably a group of you in this room right now that are annoyed. Annoyed that the rabbi is bringing politics back into the bima and into the shul. Annoyed that I am calling out President Trump in a way that really has nothing to do with Judaism. Annoyed that I am fulfilling the prophecy of this liberal rabbi preaching on the pulpit. There's another group of you that's probably a little relieved. You're probably glad that I'm calling this out. You're glad that you have a rabbi who stands for these issues. And you're glad that your kids are seeing this value espoused not just by you, but by your clergy as well. I'm going to say something to you that's going to come across as flip, perhaps even a little mean. I really don't care what you think about me sharing it. I don't care if you are bothered, and I don't care if you are soothed. That is not why I'm saying it. I'm saying it because the rabbi I crave to be, the people I aspire to be around, the congregation I want to foster is a congregation that can call balls and strikes where and when they see them. And when the President of the United States does something repugnant that is against our moral fiber and code, I want to hear your voices, and I want you to be upset. And when they do something great, even the same person, I want to hear it just the same. I bet that if the President of the United States would have circulated a video meme that depicted Benjamin Netanyahu as the Prime Minister of Israel and the most well-known Jew, with a large and crooked nose and side locks, and made him out to be a money launderer or usurious, all of you would be outraged. And you'd be more outraged if he doubled down and he didn't apologize. So here's my question. We don't have to think far and long and wide and hard for instances where people have castigated Jews and Zionists in the last 2 years, and we have been upset at the silence of others. Where's our voice? Where's our voice when another group is being chosen and alienated and pushed down? Yes, some of us have used our voice. But where's that same level of outrage? Because I have heard from most of you how mad we are that when the crosshairs are focused on us as a people, when they're looking at us, we feel alone because all of these other groups have not come to our aid. They haven't stood by our side. But we're marching to stop Asian hate. We're marching when a cop has his neck on George Floyd. But when it's on us, and there's October 7th and the response, we are continued to be demonized. And we say, where is everyone? But then when it happens in another direction, we lose our voice. Why is that? Where is that? I am craving a community that can call those balls and strikes where they are, when they are, how they are. There's a psalm written by King David. It's the 15th Psalm. It's often recited at funerals. And the psalm goes like this. Who is a person who deserves to dwell in God's sanctuary? Meaning, when we leave this world, that we have a place to dwell on high. And it gives us qualifications of such a personality. And the qualifications are that we have to judge fairly. That we will take an oath even if that oath could bring us harm. Listen to that sentence again. We will take an oath even if that oath could bring us harm. What does that sound like? It sounds like the psalmist, King David, is telling us to be a referee, to be an umpire, to call the balls and strikes as we see them, even if it brings us harm, even if everyone in the bleachers is going to boo at us, even if people are going to be upset, even if the line in Las Vegas is going to be turned upside down, we have a responsibility to call out wrong and not excuse it like so many others do, and to just push it away as if it didn't happen. Now, some of you in here, you might be thinking, well, of course, Rabbi Kirshner, he's going to call out President Trump for these terrible things he did. But where was he on those other good things he did? I'll tell you where I was. I was right here on this bema, standing right here. And if you don't believe me, you can run the tape or ask anyone else. When I loudly and proudly thanked President Trump and applauded him because it was he and he alone that got our last 20 hostages home. It wasn't anybody else. It was him. He made it happen. And it was President Trump and President Trump alone that moved our embassy finally, as it should have been, to Jerusalem. It was he and he alone that recognized the sovereignty over the Golan Heights. And many other things that he has positively done for our people. And I also stood right here on this bema and proudly and unwaveringly applauded and thanked President Biden for going to Israel, the first president to ever go during a war, quickly after, to show our support, and for sending 2 carrier groups to the north seas of the Mediterranean as a warning to Hezbollah not to engage in the war. And I appreciated beyond words his stern warning of don't to those who thought of engaging in this moment of Israel's vulnerability. And I also stood on this bema and chastised President Biden for his willingness to hold back arms because he thought it was political expediency in a time of an election. Meaning, while not perfect, I aspire and crave to call the balls and strikes as I see them, blind to who the person is. And ultimately, one day, when I decide to proverbially hang up my tallis and look back at the congregation that we have built together, I hope that what I see in you is someone who can do the same. Someone who will call out the wrong even in someone you love, and someone who can celebrate the right even in someone you despise. Not just because I want it, but that's what King David wanted. That's what the Torah tells us in Mishpatim. That's what Shkalim continues to remind us of, and that indeed is our moral code. May we all reach that aspiration by trying harder, by being better, and by using our voices in that proverbial black and white, like most of our talises, to call the right and wrong as it happens. And may it bring more moral fiber to the world that needs it now more than ever. Shabbat shalom, everyone.